Hi, I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group, this time a roundtable community outreach with LULAC.
And now, today is Saturday, November 18, 2023. Happy Thanksgiving. That's coming up this Thursday. I hope you guys have a great Turkey Day, especially those overseas serving our country. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, and Alzheimer Disease Awareness Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have a partner with us. That's Danitza D. James. She's a U.S. Army Iraq combat veteran, CEO of Repatriate Our Patriots, and the Subcommittee Veterans Chair of LULAC. And we have a panelist with us, Livier Lazaro, U.S. Marine Corps veteran and commander of the VFW Post 7420, Don Diego. How you guys doing today?
Hi, thank you for having us. We're doing great.
So you guys collaborated on HR 4569. Tell us about that and what does that mean? Start with Danitza.
Thank you, Sean. The Veteran Service Recognition Act, it was introduced by the House Democrat Mark Takano, and the Veteran Service Recognition Act will require the Department of Defense to collaborate on a study, right, for non-citizen veterans, so that they can be assisted to come back, but also to stop future deportation. And that is like extremely important part, right? It will mandate the DOD to keep track and make sure that their naturalization is completed before they leave the military service.
That sounds like a great improvement, because tell us before, because you had experiences with this before as well. Tell us what the problem was for those who have not heard our previous broadcast. There's people that serve our country, and then what happens to them if they're not U.S. citizens in certain situations?
Yeah, absolutely. So myself, right, I served in the military and I was a legal permanent resident. That's something that you have to be a legal permanent resident in order to serve in the military. What does that mean? A lot of people know this as you have to have a green card, right? So for that, there's really no process that any of the branches, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, have set up to make sure that they assist the service member in completing the process so that they can obtain their citizenship. For me, it happened because of deployment. I was deployed and I was not able to complete my naturalization ceremony before I left the military. So what happens when you do that, now you are under the immigration laws. As a non-citizen, you are under the immigration law. And if you get in trouble with the law, you commit a crime, right, then that immigration law makes that offense a deportable offense. And that is very critical, because, so for example, right, I'm just gonna paint a picture here. If Livier and I we both deployed, we're War Army, she's U.S. citizen, I am not, right? We get pulled over because a tail light is out. And then there happens to be a unregistered weapon in the car. So we both get charged for that, right? And what happens is that she serves a time, pays a fee, right? And then she gets to move on and live her life. For me, I don't get the same opportunity because I'm not a citizen, but we're both veterans. But the military service that I did has nothing to do when it comes to that, because an offense turns into an aggravated felony under the immigration law, which is what makes someone deportable. So for Livy, right, for her it's just a felony. She's okay. She just goes and serves her time, and that's it. For me, under the immigration law, it turns into an aggravated felony, which makes me deportable. And it shouldn't have never happened.
Yeah, so Ms. Lazaro, can you tell us what this means to you, and then also what are some of the consequences of someone who's deported, say they're deported to Mexico, just south of the border? Do they still access their benefits if they served in the military?
No, actually, thank you for having me. I am a retired Army veteran, Iraq. well. And what it makes me realize, when I found out about 7 years ago, I couldn't believe it. Like, our veterans that I met, how I found out was the veterans that we have in Tijuana now. And no, like, even if somehow they did have a claim already decided before they left, there's no access to care. They can't cross and go to the VA, and there's definitely nothing down there for them. And as Danitza was just saying, comparing both, I actually could compare myself to Laura Mesa, who is the one female that we just currently brought back. She's a deported veteran. She suffered military sexual trauma, went to combat, came out, got out just honorably, had a hard time adjusting, had a lot of trauma, started self-medicating with weed. These stories are pretty similar as far as in and out of the legal system, but once we both served our time, she got deported, and then she was out in Costa Rica for 16 years. She served her time in jail, then she served time in ICE, then got deported. So it's insane, and then they're out there with no mental health, no doctors, no access to any other veterans. It's just a huge injustice. I still get so shocked at how many veterans we have out there, because there's a lot of different reasons for deportation, but all the ones that I know that have, happened to where we have, some of our veterans that have gotten deported or committed a crime, they are accountable for what they did. They served their time, yet they get punished twice, and then get sent out to places where there is no care, there is nothing. And the only way that we can get them back right now, without all of the work that everyone's doing to push this movement and this bill, is in a pine box. If they die, then they will send them back to us to bury with honor, which I think is just a bigger slap in the face, or just even more insult to injury with what's happening. And we need a streamlined way of doing, giving citizenship. Just yesterday, I ran into some Army recruiters who, at our post, we always educate about this movement. All 4 of them did not know that citizenship was not automatic. And they're the ones recruiting right now. So it needs to be like a standard.
Are you saying the recruiters didn't know, or the people that were signing up, the recruits didn't know?
The recruiters did not know.
So they're selling the idea that if you join the military, you'll become a citizen, but they didn't realize that wasn't even true, a reality.
No, that it was not automatic. One of them did have a story where he had helped someone, and I explained to him, good thing you ran into you, because had there been leadership that was not supportive, or command that was not supportive, then that wouldn't have happened for that soldier. So, and it's like, even between them, some of them knew a little bit, but they're recruiting, they're saying that there's a pathway to citizenship, assuming that it's automatic, not even knowing that there's a whole process that needs to be, gone through, and complicated forms that they will need help with. They still didn't know that. So there's this huge break in the system. Can't promise something, America, without guaranteeing it.
Danitza, how long does it take typically if you go through the process to become a U.S. citizen through the military?
Well, through the military, right now, because we are at war, this is a wartime, it's supposed to be expedited, and it can take up to 6 months. For any regular process, it can take up to a year or 2. And something that a lot of people don't know is that, for example, if the application is not filled out properly, they will return it to you, and then you will have to start all over again. I know we were told of a story where a veteran did not put NA in the lines where there was no information to be put on there, and they returned the application to them because they didn't approve of the NA on those lines.
So he missed the non-applicable abbreviation NA on a line. There was a question that was asked but didn't apply to him.
Yes.
He put NA. He didn't put NA. Still was a blank line, and it got returned.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Because you can't have any. I guess you can't have any blank
meticulous
lines on the application. It sounds like.
And it's very meticulous process, right? And when you're asking a 16 or a 17, well, actually a 17 or 18-year-old to fill out this paperwork by themselves, you're asking a lot. And honestly, like for me, in my personal experience, I had no idea what immigration forms even looked like or meant. My parents were the ones that took care of all of that. And so I thought that the legal office in the military would have helped me to do that. But they didn't have a legal attorney who specialized in immigration. So the attorneys that the Army had available for me, they didn't even know either.
Wow. So how hopeful are you this is going to be passed, this bill?
Well, we are really struggling right now because it seems like this both parties, they're looking at this as a political issue, right? We have currently 41 co-sponsors, and we only have 2 Republicans, which it was the original sponsors who introduced the bill with Mark Takano. We have not had any other Republican counterpart to support this bill. And it's unfortunate because it seems that they're making this a political issue when it's not. This is, right, it's something that the Department of Defense should have taken care of before the service member even left the military. This should not even be a problem, right? So that is number one. So they're seeing this from the immigration perspective, and that's just the wrong way to do so. We don't ask, nobody asked us, right, hey, we're good enough to die for this country, but we're not good enough to be given our citizenship, something that it was promised to us before we joined.
Now, Ms. Lazaro, can you tell us, give us an idea about what does it feel like to be deported, and what is the experience like if you're deported to a country where maybe you didn't grow up in?
Well, from what I have heard from some of our deported veterans, I mean,
also, can you do me one favor, also, Ms. Lazaro? Can you come closer to the phone? I think you have us on speaker. I think you might have us on speaker.
I do. Okay, hold on a second.
So we can hear you a little bit better.
Can you hear me?
That's much better.
Okay. Yes. So one of the things that I have heard from some of our deported and repatriated veterans is they are sent to a country that they do not know, but then they are also sent there as an American veteran. Like, this country knows that, the people know that, so they can be in danger. And there's been a lot of times where cartels have wanted to either kidnap our veterans or hurt them because of the skills that they know we do have. And they're out there, they're lost, they don't have, any family that they know there. It's not a country that they know. And we're also putting them in danger because now their country sees them as an American. They pledge loyalty to this country. They are an American. So we're not only like disposing of them like that, we're putting them in danger.
And if you're separated from your family, do you often see the family go with the person, the veteran, or who's going to another country, or do they stay here in the United States?
No, the family will usually stay here in the United States, keep working to try to get the veteran back, but it splits the family up. Some that have been out for 2025, the family unit has broken down completely. Some relates, like with our veteran Hector Barras, he has an older daughter who he barely has any relationship with because of the deportation. And sometimes new families are gotten, when they're deported, they usually start a family down there. And then you have to think about that when they are coming back to deportation. So it's always a separation of the family, and depending on what country they're deported to, because we do have deported veterans in 53 countries. It might not be as easy as the ones that we have if you wanted to be able to get to the border. We have them in Kenya, in Brazil, in Germany. We might not get as close access to be able to let them know that we support them, let them know that, like, we're still fighting and until they all come home. But we really need this bill to be passed. It is definitely a bipartisan bill. It has immigration in it only because America did not uphold its promise of citizenship the first time. It's not an immigration bill. It's a veteran bill. And it just needs to be seen as that. Like, it has immigration because they didn't do it right the first time, and we're trying to prevent that now.
Now, Ms. Danitza, so if someone, say, joins the military, they're from a foreign country, they do their service, they didn't get naturalized or didn't become a U.S. citizen through the military, How hard is it for them to just on their own go and become a U.S. citizen or do the application process just outside of the military when they get out of the military?
So right now, there are several states that are providing resources, right? For example, Texas has a Texas Veterans Commission that has pro bono attorneys to help service members, both active duty and veterans, to complete their immigration application. But for example, I'm located in Virginia, and I have not seen any immigration office. I'm not saying there are not any out here, but they're just not as available to service members and veterans. So it can still take up to a year or two to complete that process, not to mention the fees that they have to pay for the applications.
How expensive is it?
Well, I know that one of the applications, the fee is $400 just for the initial application, and then the fees just keep coming up. For example, even for some of the veterans that came back on humanitarian parole, in order for them to apply for an extension, they have to pay $750 just for the application. It's not reimbursable if they don't get approved.
Wow. And then, is it easier to become a U.S. citizen if you have military service on your resume? Danitza?
Well, it's easier simply because it's going to be expedited when you're active duty, right? But it's as something that a lot of people don't know or may think that they join the military so they can get their citizenship, but that is not the case. So in my experience, I already had a green card. I was already here legally, and I could have just continue the process and apply for my naturalization without joining the military. So I really don't need the military service, but because we are at wartime, the process is expedited and some of the fees are waived. That is really the only difference. And I know we're getting close to our time, but I do want to share before we go that I want to share this with the audience because this is one of the injustices, right, that we see, that veterans are not allowed to come back when they are deported, but they can come back if they're dead. They can come back to the United States and be buried at a national cemetery with full honors. And this happened just a couple of months ago. A Vietnam veteran passed away in Juarez, Mexico. His appendix ruptured, and he did not have the health care or the money to pay to be seen. And the ICE department, DHS, denied his request for humanitarian parole, and they said that it was not an emergency. He died 3 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they can't visit the U.S. They have to basically stay outside the country.
Nope.
Correct.
Wow. All right, I appreciate you guys coming on our show again and giving us this information, because I think a lot of people do not realize, understand, particularly for people that are here, that are from other countries, that are not U.S. citizens, that join the military, that have the idea that they will become U.S. citizens if they serve, thinking that it's an automatic thing when it's really not.
It's not, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's not. And right now, like, for example, we've been trying to get a hold of Mike Bose from Chicago, and he has not answered our calls. He is not a co-sponsor of this bill. And what that tells me is that he's not supporting our military services, our military branches that took an oath to protect and defend this country.
Danitza D. James, Livier, Lazaro, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. You guys have a great weekend.
You too. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Hi, I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Al.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group, this time with our partner, National Nurses United. Today is Saturday, November 18th, 2023. Happy Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday. Make sure that all you veterans out there eat hearty and well, and we wish you well overseas particularly. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer Ivan Ortega of Scotch Productions. And of course, November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, and Alzheimer Disease Awareness Month. And we have a partner with us. That's Adelena Marshall, suggested by a mental health nurse. And also, we're going to talk about domestic violence and the programs and services that the VA offers. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for having us here today. It's our pleasure to be able to speak with you and our audience about this subject. And now that the holidays are approaching, a lot of times domestic violence increase during those periods of time. So we just want to make your listening public aware of some of the things that I'll say are flags of potential domestic violence abusers, and how some of our veterans are impacted by this, male, females, and trans.
So give us a sense, how widespread is, for our audience, how widespread is domestic abuse and domestic violence among the military population and veterans?
Well, I don't have all the statistics, but there's a high statistics there. You have family separation due to assignments. They come back home. The family doesn't understand what they've been through. The separation contributes to anxiety, and sometimes during the separation, that while they're on, sent on duty or changing bases, it creates a difference in the people involved. Like sometimes they become involved in jobs or other projects, and maybe the spouse is coming back home. They feel they're not getting the attention that they need. They may feel that their partner has engaged in other relationships. Substance abuse is a big contributing factor, and also actually, you'll be surprised. Also, some of the medication that they provide for, to increase intimate relationships where they haven't received proper education regarding the little blue pill. And they may come home, or they do come home wanting to have intimacy with their partners, and the stress, and some of them are tired from traveling so long, and it impacts that intimacy. And they might need medication and doesn't understand how the medication works, and then may not be able to engage in that intimacy, or the partner may have lost some interest in that.
So if someone's going through domestic violence, can they call the VA to try to get out of that situation?
Well, the VA does have programs. Our social workers have programs. The VA just had a big program for Domestic Violence Month, which was October. They have put advertisement on all the trains in Chicago, the Blue Line. I think there's Pink Line. All the lines have advertisement of the VA involvement in trying to reduce and prevent domestic violence.
Because from what I understand from a lot of the advocacy groups that support people that have gone through domestic violence and domestic abuse, the military population is about twice as likely. There's about 2 times as many incidents of spousal abuse than the civilian population. So it seems to be pretty pervasive. What are some of the things that people can do to get help through the VA? Specifically, what are some of the how do these programs actually help people in the military?
Some
population?
of our military who've had traumatic brain injuries, especially depending on where that injury is, can cause them to act very violently. And so there are many programs. We encourage our veterans, if they feel they need help or if they're in a domestic violence situation, to come to the VA and meet with our social workers so that they can help support them, put them in program, maybe help them to find housing or shelter that will, remove them from that threat of violence. And this is male or female and trans. They're all exposed to domestic violence.
There was it was an interesting story on CBS. They had Kate O'Donnell actually did a story on military sexual abuse and also spousal abuse in the military. And what she found by interviewing a lot of women who were in the military, currently serving, and veterans, that they often felt scared or hesitant to report their abuse because they felt that they would be more in danger after reporting it than before.
They do feel that way, and sometimes the abuser will react very violently to know. And in the military, if they're accused of domestic violence, it can impact their career. So they do react kind of violently if it is reported or if they're threatening. And I would advise anybody who's in a domestic violence situation to not threaten to leave or to notify the police. Just go and do it. Just be silent about it and wait till you're in a safe environment to take those steps, because you're placing yourself at risk if you're pushing back in that manner, saying, well, if you don't stop, I'm going to report this or whatever. I would encourage them not to do that, but to seek help. If you're in the military, you can go to an officer or somewhere, or clergy. They have social service also in the military that will help support military spouses regarding that.
One of the things I find interesting is that 85% of abusers, from what I understand and what I've read about, are men, and about 500 women are killed a year from domestic abuse, from what's been reported. This seems like we as men can do a lot more to try and resolve this issue. What are some of the things that men need to understand so that they get the help before they become violent or want to take someone's life?
Well, I think the first thing men need to understand is that this is a very, very serious situation, and that your partner is not somebody that you feel you can take your anxiety or frustrations out on it. Some of the signs of someone who may respond negatively that way is people who have problems with authoritative figures. Your spouse or partner may become embarrassed in the presence of others, and that can trigger them. The behavior on the road, and I'll also add behavior towards pets. If you have a spouse that's abusive to your dog or your cat or whatever pet you may have, then that's a sign that that may carry over into the family dynamics. Your partner also wants all your attention all the time, what people would call clingy, or they got to be around me all the time, and they have to be in charge. Sometimes they have dual personalities, or what we may, most people would call a dual personality. So one minute they're very nice and calm, and then the next minute they become very aggressive. They anger easily over the slightest little thing. And I always say, if you're feeling overwhelmed or have high anxiety levels, just go ahead and take a walk or a break or go for a little drive to just remove yourself from the other areas. Sometimes they make promises to you and promises, I'm not going to do that again, whatever, and then you want to trust in that it's not going to happen again. But those are first signs. If they're overly jealous, if you're around your friends or family, if they won't let you be among your family by yourself, they've always got to be there, or with your friends, if you want to go out to lunch or something with your girlfriends or your male friends, and they just start acting out. They're very critical of you or what you're wearing and things like that. Unnecessary criticism. It's not that they might comment that they might like an outfit or something, but just very, very critical no matter what you do, and controlling.
It seems like there's a big psychological game, I guess you want to call it, that is there.
It is.
And there's people that have never been in the military that are abusive. I don't know if there's any studies out there that show that whether or not if the military increases, it seems to lend that the idea that trauma is contagious. When I say trauma is contagious, because it seems like when people experience trauma, particularly men in the military, and sometimes women too, but men in the military, because most of the abusers are men. We are most of the abusers out there. You get the trauma, you start to self-medicate, and then all of a sudden you take it out in violence. Either you're shooting yourself or shooting somebody else, or you're beating your spouse.
Well, strangulation and stabbing is also can lead to that, not just necessarily someone being shot, or there's reports of people trying to run over, intimate partners. Also, a lot of times with games, football games, basketball games, if you don't have the food ready, or if you interrupt that. And so I would encourage spouses, male or female, if the male is engaged in that, then go out maybe shopping or doing something, maybe go to a movie or something during that period, that if they get if your partner is just very intense into the game, or they might even get angry if their team lost, so they don't take losses very well. Or they feel, some of them have strong feelings of abandonment. But I think
there's a difference between being mad that your team won. If the Bears lose, you might get mad, you might throw something at TV, but taking a hand to someone and doing any kind of physical violence over really anything. A wise man told me once is that when you actually go to cuffs, meaning you start putting hands on people to try to physically fight someone, that means you have already lost the previous fight, which is your words, your language. You can't express yourself correctly, or express yourself or deal with the trauma that you're already experiencing or the pain that you have inside, so you take it out on somebody else. Right. And it seems like we need to do a better job at trying to get men to actually face up and deal with their pain and their trauma, so that they don't become abusive, or they stop being abusive. Because oftentimes the guy walking down the street that everybody sees and seems like he's the life of the party, the nicest guy in the world, volunteers at church and everything like that, could be the same guy that's being abusive to his children or to his wife or a spouse or a significant other at home.
You're right. Exactly. They're hidden abusers. They want the public to see them one way, their friends and family, but once they are away from that environment, their personality changes, their their behavior changes and it becomes a flag that something's going on. Some women early in the relationship may not even recognize some of the signs because you got somebody giving you a lot of attention, and then that attention can turn into control, and then it leads to something else, and you may want out of the relationship, but you may feel stuck there. But I would encourage them to seek help, to if you're a veteran, go to the VA. If you're a private citizen, there's women's shelters. There's, the Y might be able to help them and have information for them that might support them getting out of that relationship.
And I also want to give out the National Domestic Abuse Hotline number, which is 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-7233. Whether you are the abuser or being abused, call that number to get help. And particularly for men, I think they should reach out to, if ideations of violence, if you think about hurting yourself or hurting other people, don't let it escalate, and don't let yourself snap and then do something that you regret. And don't ruin somebody else's life by spreading your trauma. Like I said, trauma is contagious. I mean, I've come to the conclusion that trauma is contagious, because when you have the trauma and you're doing things to yourself or and having these ideas in your head, and what do? You act out, and then now you spread the trauma to somebody else.
Right. There's also, they can text 88788. So those numbers, I would encourage everybody to lock it into your phone so you can have it. It should be also wherever you might have your emergency numbers, put that there so you can quickly, access that. Go to the bathroom. If you're on an airplane, let the staff on the flights know that you may need help when that airplane lands, that you may be afraid to continue on with that trip or home with that person, and they can intervene. But I always felt that the women's bathroom is a pretty safe place for women to go to. A lot of times there's other women there, and they might offer you some kind of support or be able to call that number for you if you don't have your phone. Sometimes your phone is not available to you. Your phone has been taken away from you, so you don't have access. And that's also another trigger for abuse, because now people go through your phone and they feel there's something there that shouldn't be there. It could be misinterpreted, or somebody could have sent them something thinking it's funny or whatever. It can trigger that spouse, again, male or female or trans. That phone becomes a very dangerous thing to have. So, you have to be mindful of that. If you have somebody that's very jealous or suspicious, or even to the point of paranoia, be mindful of them having access to your phone.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like also that oftentimes these things seem to escalate. So everything starts like as a honeymoon period where the relationship is good, everything seems to be fine, and all of a sudden, as time goes on, like as you mentioned, things start to add on. They start becoming more controlling, then they don't want to let you out their sight. And the next thing you know, they're criticizing you and being critical. And the next thing you know, they're getting angrier and angrier. The next thing you know, it escalates, hopefully not, but to violence. So those early warning signs, I think, are really important, as you mentioned.
Right, or relationships that haven't had time to develop, and all of a sudden they're declaring, their love for you or something. And again, if it doesn't feel good to you, if your antenna goes up at all, you have guardian angels on your shoulder, and they are always right and almost always immediately right. Learn to not second guess yourself. If you just pick up on anything, maybe you're out to dinner with somebody and you're just not feeling comfortable, you don't think you want to see this person again, follow that feeling. But don't be I'll say, don't be disrespectful in, in ending the relationship. Just say, we mutually or something like that, because that could also trigger somebody.
It seems
So
like
you
the
have
best
to
way to
just
go is, in most cases, is just to leave. Because the more conversations you have with that individual that's being violent, the more excuses they give as to why you shouldn't leave.
Right.
The
If
more
you
emotional
see
they
it's
get.
escalating, but it may not escalate at that point, but you just might feel like, they've said something or your antenna done gone up and like, no, this is not for me. Then you need to go ahead and, excuse yourself or pay for your own meal and just go.
I always thought it was
worth it.
I always thought a good sign for men and women is if the person that you're with, are they still friends with anybody they used to date? Particularly if that person was in a serious relationship. If they're still friends with people they used to date, that's usually a good sign. I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people because sometimes people have their own egos.
That's a good point. Yeah,
and they don't want to
to
hear about the ex-person. But if that person has no connection with anybody they ever dated before, to me that's a red flag.
Right. Or even family members. I mean, we get veterans that have a history of violence and the family doesn't want to be around them, or sometimes they will tell us that they have challenges maintaining relationships. Some of them have dated people in other countries and maybe brought them here, and the next thing they know, they left because they're afraid of them. So, and also how they interact with their family, with their mother, with their father. But a lot of the abuse have started in the home. They were abused, or they've seen their parents be abusive to each other, and they don't think anything's wrong with it, and they start relationships out like that.
Yeah, I think we all know. I think all logical people know that hitting someone is wrong. But the thing, the difference is that from even guys that I've known that have confessed to me that they've been violent. The thing that I hear oftentimes is that they just snap. They don't. It's like they can't control it. And oftentimes when they do it, they're apologetic and are sorry for doing it. But yet they keep doing it because they can't stop. They don't have any other way or mechanism of trying to express themselves. It's like the first thing that triggers them, they just snap and they just the first thing they do is become violent because that's all they really know how to do. So learning how to channel that anger and channel that violence into something else. One question to you though, before we run out of time, is if you're married to someone or in a relationship with someone who's a veteran, but you are not a veteran. So say oftentimes, most military veterans are men. If they have a woman in their life or a person in their life who's not a veteran, can they get help from the VA?
Yeah, the VA will help. We've even had patients that are not veterans, but they're married to a veteran, and they'll do humanitarian support for them. So I would say just reach out to the VA. We have many, many programs, and the VA is growing, and we want our veterans. A veteran is someone who is already out of the military, to come there and to seek the help and let us support them. And I can say one more thing about the VA. I just in the last 2 months, the VA is hiring. We've just hired over 60 RNs, which is unheard of. So the professionals are coming in to be able to support the programs that the VA is offering. I mean, as sometimes we would maybe only have 6 or 7 RNs coming in a month or a few months, but just from early October to last Wednesday, we've had already 60 RNs, and this is just alone at Jesse Brown, that is coming in to support all the programs that the VA is offering our vets. And also more of a focus on mental health and hiring more mental health professionals to offer counseling and care to our veterans who are suffering. I mean, I have veterans who have told me they just get blinding headaches and then they just feel violent from that, or some of the things they've experienced will trigger them. One person told me I just stay mad all the time. So can we support that? We have programs for anger management and to teach you how to calm yourself, and even medication if needed, prescription meds if needed to assist you to be able to deal with life stressors.
And to be clear also too, that if someone is not married to a veteran who hasn't served in the military, can they get help from the VA if they're being abused by a veteran?
So I would say call the VA and they can direct them as necessary. We don't really take non-veterans, but if you are married to a veteran, then come there and seek treatment or get information on how we can best assist you. And that veteran might be more open if their significant other is coming to the VA. They might be more open for treatment, knowing that their significant other is reaching out to the VA.
All right. And men out there, if like I said, if you're listening, watching our show either on YouTube or Facebook, or coming upon this podcast later in life as this podcast goes through the ether and so on in the future, get help if you are having violent thoughts. There's no reason for you to have violent thoughts about hurting people, hurting yourself, hurting anybody in your family particularly. Go get help, get treated, talk it out, find out what the issue is, solve your trauma. Because if you don't, all you're doing is sowing that seed of trauma, and it's spreading to everybody in your family.
Right, but this is not just a man's problem.
True.
These are,
85% of men are abusers. 85% of the abusers are men.
Anybody, yes, because there are some females who can be very abusive in domestic violence, and it's just not physical. It could be, like we said, verbal abuse. So it can cross a lot of different social interactions. And just be mindful of, if you are in a situation like that, please go to a place to be safe and seek help for yourself as well as your spouse. If you're married to them or you want to stay in that relationship, then try to seek help so that the relationship can improve and you won't be at risk of being harmed or killed by somebody.
Now, have you ever seen someone become reformed from being abusive to their partner?
Yeah, I think once they realize what is triggering them and learn better coping skills and reduce the stress that might lead to that, we see. I see a lot of patients recovering. Our mental health care now is focused on recovering. And so I've had patients that I've seen years later that will come up to me and I don't even recognize them because their recovery has been very successful, and they're milder, they're approachable, they're enjoyable to talk with. So yeah, I've seen it. I can give you statistics, but I have actually can testify that I am aware of that happening.
Adelena Marshall, thank you for your time. I thank us for telling us about the Jesse Brown VA domestic violence programs that are available. Once again, if you have any problems in your life with domestic violence, whether you see it or whether you know about it or whether you experience it yourself, call the National Abuse Hotline, 800-799-7233. That's 800-799-7233. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much.
People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, the service, the food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Okay.
On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for this partnership. Yes! Yes!
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
Where I started with this entire conversation by saying, if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Hi, I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
And with that, welcome to America's Heroes Group, a roundtable with our partner, Veterans Legislative Voice, the podcast, and AHG correspondent. Our Saturday, November 18th, 2023. Happy Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday, especially for all those veterans and all those people that are serving and that with their families this holiday season. We are thinking about you and they're in our prayers. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, and Alzheimer Disease Awareness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And, of course, we have Stephanie Kalota with us today, a U.S. Army Sergeant First Class in the Reserves, and also the founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. She has a podcast, and also she's our AHG correspondent. We're going to talk about legislation and the possibilities of supporting Israeli-Hamas, the war with Hamas between the Israelis, and also the benefits and differences between peacetime and wartime veterans. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. So tell us, what is going on with this legislation?
Okay, so there hasn't been a whole lot of movement yet because of everything that's been going on. You know, we had the issues with the speakers. We had trying to get a continuing resolution passed to keep the government moving and funded. So there's a lot of things going on. And then on top of this, we're having to deal with the Israel-Hamas war and trying to support Israel without also getting into a lot of another war ourselves. And so there's a little bit of a tap dance that the U.S. is trying to do. And I really want to at least probably explain, or at least give a comparison or example of what we may enter to. With what might be happening with the Israel-Hamas war, we might actually be in a more of a wartime situation of Bosnia and Kosovo in the 90s, because we weren't part of an actual wartime effort. We were there mostly as peacetime or peace officers and helpers, basically, while this entire war is happening. We didn't have all-out war or operation like Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom, those type of things. It's comparatively different. And one of the things that has been making things uneasy for a lot of us advocates is because a lot of times peacetime veterans don't receive the same benefits as regular wartime veterans. The biggest example is the wartime veteran pension that they can receive. If you served in peacetime in the 80s or between the Gulf Wars and the 90s, and you never actually went to the Gulf War or anything like that, you basically are not eligible for the wartime pension, that you can receive that extra benefit for you and your family. And there's other things involved that has happened to Bosnia and Kosovo veterans, like they were left out of the PACT Act. Gulf War and Desert Storm veterans were included in the PACT Act, which helps with the toxic exposures to burn pits. But there were burn pits in Kosovo and Bosnia.
Sure was.
Mm-hmm. And we have, there's a listing that I looked up on Vets HQ, and there was at least 2 in Bosnia and 1 in Kosovo. There's been a bunch elsewhere. There was 1 in Turkey at one point. So there's a bunch of things happening all at the same time, and the U.S. military is still technically using burn pits to this day. They're not doing it to the extent that they've used in the past, but they have not banned the usage for it, which means that our service members can still be exposed.
I'm sorry, go ahead. But are the new burn pits being done with these special high incendiary burners or machines where they are supposed to burn so hot that they release less gas, or are they just doing it the old-fashioned way with kerosene and everything else?
I haven't fully seen a confirm of all of that. I've seen that they have the availability of the higher incinerators and things like that, but honestly, you know for one that sometimes you have to do things on the fly and you don't have the equipment you need to have when you're in the military, and you have to make do. And I was one of those people that actually was burning stuff in barrels because we had to do that in Kuwait because we didn't have any of the incinerators available to us when I was in Kuwait. So, it might still happen today, despite the fact that the U.S. military has those equipment, but some will still get exposed to toxic exposures, and we want to make sure that those people are covered.
Now, when you mentioned that during peacetime, so, to me, I served during the Bosnia-Kosovo conflict, and my unit was activated. I didn't have to go because they rotated us out, and I was in a motor pool. So being in a motor pool, they wanted the medics in my unit, not the mechanics. So they kept rotating in and out of Kosovo and Bosnia. Are you saying if a person serves during that time, or serves, say, the Israeli-Hamas war does evolve into something where there's a UN peacekeeping operation and the U.S. participates in that, and then soldiers and military members are sent over there, they're not going to get the same benefits as if they had been deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, or is it because they're not?
Correct.
Certain people are. Oh, really? So even if you're deployed overseas, you still won't get the same benefits as someone who served during a quote-unquote official war.
Yes, and that's because actually Israel is not one of the listed countries that's included on the PACT Act. So they wouldn't be included on the PACT Act. The PACT Act doesn't have an end date, thank God. But if people are deployed to areas like Syria, Jordan, other places, Saudi Arabia, to assist, that can help them get the qualification for the PACT Act. But if they deploy directly to Israel, they might not qualify. So Congress would have to add that. Or VA. The VA may be able to add that themselves with the approval.
That seems such a, I don't even know the word to describe it, like a slap in the face, because you would think that with the severity of no matter where you're experiencing a burn pit or wherever you're experiencing some kind of conflict, you're still subject to the same kind of danger that you are, no matter what the title of the country is, wherever it's Israel or whether it's Syria, whether it's Afghanistan. The mission is essentially, in many ways, the same. You may not be going door to door, knocking down doors and looking for a terrorist, but you're still exposed to gunfire. You're still exposed to chemicals. You still can get hurt in many different ways from Sunday. And not only that, but the people that you're supporting, they may not be following a lot of the safety protocols that we're trying to initiate with burn pits. They could be burning stuff themselves.
Yes, because that happens. Yeah, and and I'm sure you probably remember about all of those Marines that died in Beirut. That wasn't a wartime effort. That technically wasn't a wartime effort. So people can still die doing peacekeeping missions.
Especially in an area where you still have Hamas, who does not like the United States, who is still going to be hostile to U.S. troops and soldiers, differently than what we saw in Bosnia and Kosovo. The Bosnians they weren't really trying to attack U.S. or UN peacekeeping. No. It was pretty much an internal genocide type thing going on, during that period.
Yeah, actually, I think it was one of the MSNBC reporters actually had a Hamas leader gloat about killing those Marines in Beirut. I mean, just outright, blatantly gloating about it to a U.S. reporter on air. And it's just so frustrating and so scary at times because you know that 300 individuals from our U.S. military was deployed near that area, even though they're not disclosing where they're going to be served at. But there are people there. There are 2 warships in the area. There's a lot of things that are going on, and a lot of the U.S. military is around there to support, which is just they are surrounding a powder keg that is about to blow.
Right, and that's the part that makes a lot of people in the military concerned, and because it's such a volatile situation, and you also have people in Syria, fighters in Syria, targeting U.S. troops, which is just over the border. Yes,
and they've been attacking U.S. troops and U.S. bases with their own drones, and there have been a number of people that's been injured already. Thank God Syria is still on the list for the PACT Act. So, I mean, those type of things is what is making things all right, but I don't think that they had the foresight to think that we would be in a war supporting Israel. And that's probably one of the reasons, because we haven't been there to support Israel in a very long time, unofficially. And so it's just one of those things that can get really complicated really fast for people.
And I'm thinking back, looking at history, did we even support them during the 6-Day War when Israel was able to, because people don't realize Israel has a very, very powerful army, one of the strongest armies in the world. That's the reason why they're able to hold off and fend off all their enemies, because they're basically in the middle of a bunch of hate. I mean, still our thoughts and prayers out for the Palestinians, because they're caught in the middle, because oftentimes people confuse Hamas with the Palestinians. Hamas and the Palestinians are 2 different beasts. The Hamas is what rules the Palestinians. The Hamas, however, are the group that wants to wage war against Israel, and anybody else that's not, bowing down to Sharia law for the most part.
Yeah, but we didn't. I'm Googling this because I can't remember the exact stuff that was going on with the 6-Day War and the other conflicts that Israel has had in the past couple of decades. And the U.S. officially didn't. They continue to refuse aid to Israel militarily. But I know in the last couple of decades we've been selling a lot of our military supplies and our planes and things like that to Israel. So it's one of those things that we've been helping in one way or another.
And that's interesting to me, because now it brings up the argument then, so what are we doing there now? Because if during the 6-Day War, if you don't know your history about what happened, a lot of people don't remember this type of stuff, but Israel pretty much took over that whole, so they launched an attack against Israel. All their enemies, I can't remember all the different countries, but a bunch of countries just launched an attack against Israel, this little small island in the middle of an Arab land, an Arab region. Israel then turned around and kicked their butts and kicked them out of Israel and took over pretty much parts of Egypt, like a whole big chunk of Egypt just went to Israel. And they had all this land all of a sudden, and they didn't even know what to do with it. They conquered all this land and multiplied the region of Israel was almost multiplied tenfold. That's how much land they conquered. They conquered 10 times. It would be as if the United States took over the entire North American region.
Yeah, and it's hard when you take over a area of land that you're not familiar with, because there's a lot of things militarily to defend and have to plan offenses and things. All of that war games that you have in your head that can cause a lot of issues, and it can cause a country to implode. Yeah, I looked it up. It's Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria all attacked Israel and basically at once. Which is crazy.
And he kicked all of their butts without any other support from anybody. But this was a surprise attack and took a lot of their land on top of that, and then gave it back years later.
Yeah. Yep.
Gave back the land. So if Israel wanted to go in and just level the West Bank and Gaza Strip, they could do that literally overnight. They have the power to do it. It wouldn't look good to the world, which is probably the reason why they don't want to do it. But at the same time, they have to own up to the fact that they've been treating the Palestinians like garbage. They have been treating them horribly and suffocating them, not letting them have the opportunity to get to help themselves and to grow and to get proper education, food, economics, things like that. However, if they do that, then they're worried about Hamas. Hamas is still there. Hamas still doesn't care about how well the Palestinians are doing. They just want to kill every Israeli that lives in Israel.
Yep, and it's crazy because an Israeli dies in this conflict, the Hamas wins. If a Palestinian dies, Hamas still wins, and it's one of those really complicated issues right now. There's a lot of lack of confidence now on the Israeli military because of the most recent attack on October 7th. So they're wondering. So a lot of people have a lot of doubts on how Israel can continue to defend themselves. So that can play into the decisions made by the big officials up here in Congress on whether to support Israel a little bit more. There's another complication because of the polarized country is so polarized as it is right now in our country. It's very similar. And Netanyahu and President Biden do not work well together. They're very opposite sides of the spectrum politically, and there can be a lot of complications that come around that, but we're still trying to, make things work. So it's just a lot of things at play that's really going on right now.
Two totally different mindsets, I agree. Netanyahu was a former Israeli special agent. He was basically like a special forces operative when he was younger in the Israeli military. So he's got that mindset. He still has that hawkish mindset, and it plays well to his base.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does, because it exudes a bunch of strength, and that's what has been helping him to remain popular. So there's a lot of things that are coming into play right now, and we'll see how it goes along and whether more U.S. troops go into support. Because a lot of people might not know right now, but with everything that had been going on with Ukraine in the past, especially in the past decade, we've actually been deploying troops to Poland, basically, there, which can support Ukraine and a bunch of other things. And they've been actually deploying people there since 2014, I believe, and even sending Reserve and National Guard troops for deployments and ATEs, because I know a number of people that went out there for annual training, spent about a month there. And they actually started assigning permanent party troops to Poland now, just like we did in Germany. And it's basically building up that presence right next to Ukraine with everything that's going on. So it just increases a ton of tensions that may cause more conflicts in the future, especially if Russia gets anywhere close to our bases in Poland, because it's not that far away.
And then what's going on with the money that wasn't approved? So we just passed, kept the government open, so the government's not shutting down again.
Yes.
But they didn't approve much money or any money for the war effort in Ukraine.
Right. Because there's a lot of contested effort that's going on right now, because one of the things that the Republicans and the GOP is to cut funding and try to save more money, and they feel like sending more money to Ukraine would not be supporting any of the efforts that's going on. So that they see that as a waste of money. And that's one of the things that they've been really having issues with. And with the conflicts that's been going on between the previous speaker and the current speaker and the Freedom Caucus can cause a lot of mess on what's going on. And the aid to Ukraine and trying to get aid to Ukraine and Israel, I mean, and not going with any budget cuts really cost Speaker McCarthy's his job. And so if Speaker Johnson tries to do the same thing, he may lose his job as well, because he's still having to abide with the rules that McCarthy approved earlier this year with all of the speaker elections. Mm-hmm. So still one person can call a vote of no confidence in the speaker.
Mm-hmm. And you can, to an extent, and I think this often doesn't get talked about in a lot of more liberal circles. We don't talk about the fact that the deficit is growing, and we are spending a lot of money. We just spent trillions of dollars on a stimulus package that put us in almost dang near hyperinflation. I mean, trying to buy a turkey this holiday season was a mess. Yep,
and it's a lot of different plans on trying to, and there's a lot of different theories out there of how to try to help with that deficit and bring it down, and the national debt and everything that's going on. And I mean, personally, I agree with President Biden's push for funding the IRS, because those are the people doing the audits that can actually get more money into the government to keep it running. Mm-hmm. And those that would be basically hired to do the audits are for people that are like $1.5 million of income a year and up. Those are the people that will be, there's more people to audit, because I mean, the IRS didn't properly audit President Trump until almost 3 years into his term, when they were supposed to do it on day one. So because they didn't have the staff or the funding to keep that going.
And then also, was there any talk with, because recently Xi Jinping came to the United States and met in San Francisco with Biden, did they talk about eliminating some of these Trump-era tariffs, which are also pushing prices up and have pushed prices up?
That one I'm not quite sure of, because I saw a few things in there, and I know there was a lot of heated discussion about Taiwan and other things, but I'm not quite sure about that one. So if you already know, please share, because that one I'm not quite sure of.
That I'm still waiting. As far as I understand, nothing's really moving on that, but I know they're talking about it. Stephanie Kalota, thank you for your time again. You always give us some great information. This was exciting to talk up to you again, as always. And to our audience, and also to you, Stephanie, make sure you look at our link. We have a link out there for people that want to sign up for Jeopardy on our website. So if you're interested, and anybody else out there, you don't have to be a veteran to sign up on our website. Anybody can sign up. But that is something that Jeopardy wants to try to do, is get more military people to get on their show and show what you know. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Hi, I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
And with that, welcome to America's Heroes Group. This time on the roundtable, we are globally connected with KFF Health News. Today is Saturday, November 18th, 2023. This Thursday is Thanksgiving Day, and we wish a special Thanksgiving to all those veterans overseas serving and also all the veterans out there across this country. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, and Alzheimer Disease Awareness Month. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scout to Honor Productions. And of course, we have our panelists with us as Stephanie Stapleton, KFF Health News Senior Editor. She has 20 years of experience covering healthcare. She has been with KFF Health News since its launch in 2009. We're going to talk about her article, KFF Health News and PolitiFact staff article, Another GOP Primary Debate, Another Night of Verbal Clashes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good. So tell us, what was it? Give us an overview of the debate from what you saw. Just real quick.
To me, quickly, it was a clash, and people were definitely fighting it out. I was watching the healthcare issues closely, and in that regard, the people on the stage, the candidates, were definitely putting out there where they stood on abortion, and certain candidates were challenging the others to be more clear about what their position would be. And then the candidates also touched on a few other health-related issues as well.
Okay. So more specifically, we talked about abortion. What other topics were discussed?
They talked briefly about, they brushed up toward entitlement reform. In fact, it started off, Kristen Welker, who was one of the moderators, was pressing the candidates to talk about, if there was going to be an increase in the age of Social Security eligibility, what exactly would that age be? But that really is a difficult thing to pinpoint because there are a lot of factors that go into that calculation, and none of the candidates would really reveal that exact age that they would consider. But instead, they sort of started talking about other things, just very lightly though, and they, such as Medicare and like getting Medicare back into fiscally sound shape and, some things like that. But again, they were very light on policy, more just sort of saying like, yes, we need to think about this kind of.
So no deep dives into real policies and no deep dives into real issues, it sounds like.
I would say, Nikki Haley at one point talked about the need to beef up Medicare Advantage plans more. But again, those are expensive. Those cost the Medicare program money. They're very popular with beneficiaries. So that sort of, again, highlighted what I guess is one of the challenges that the Republican candidates are facing with the budget in general. As much as they want to rein in spending, they keep targeting the discretionary spending. But that's like, those aren't the big line items on the budget.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's hard to talk about changing Medicare. And I think that was revealed during the debate.
So which candidates, in your opinion, I'm going to go down a list of different things, but which candidates shine of the people that are on the list?
I think everybody had some moments. I think, if you listen to the broader discussion about the debate that came afterward, I think, Nikki Haley definitely gained some points. And again, on the abortion question, which is another point that I feel like the Republicans are struggling with on their messaging right now, she was the one that reiterated how personally she is very opposed to abortion, but she said, I want to be realistic. And she was saying, like, right now in Congress, there are not votes to pass a national ban. So, she was saying we need to think about things that that are compromises or that we could build consensus on, which that seems to be something that might gain some popularity down the road. But then other members, like he has now stepped out of the race, but Senator Tim Scott, he was the one that was very firm of like, I believe that we need to have a 15-week national ban. And he challenged both Nikki Haley and DeSantis to meet him on that. And neither one would jump onto that policy challenge. So, that like on the abortion question, that was sort of where the give and take is. It's like, do you support a national ban, or how do you go forward from there?
Who do you think was most prepared on the panel?
Oh gosh, I think. Well, I would say that they were all very prepared. They were ready to talk about different things, and in some cases they were battling it out, trying to grab the spotlight. Because in that debate, let's remember, the former President Donald Trump is the front runner by miles and miles, and he was not on the stage.
He's notably absent on top of that.
Yeah,
which
so
is really
the
ironic,
people that were there were just trying to grab a little bit more momentum for themselves, I think.
So who communicated the best out of the group, would you say?
I would go back to, I thought that Nikki Haley did well. And that is just my opinion, and I'm not necessarily a political reporter, but, I do follow it, and I, was doing some coverage for us. And I think the polls after the fact and the coverage after the fact reflected that as well. I thought, all the others had their moments.
Who was the most attacked? Was she the most attacked, or someone else most attacked?
I think that she did seem to be, there were a lot of flare-ups. I think she and Ramaswamy had a couple pretty intense flashpoints along the way. I think Ron DeSantis also was under attack at different points, and I think that I think it sort of depended on the topic and how they were sparring. But again, back to what I said earlier, the real point was all of those people on the stage were trying to grab some of the spotlight for themselves, because they're fighting for second right now.
So since Trump wasn't there, he was noticeably absent. Where was he at that time?
Oh, he had some counter programming in nearby Hialeah, Florida. The debate was held in Miami, and so Trump, the former president, had his own rally in Hialeah, which is nearby.
And was it a pretty well attended as it was during his previous campaign, or was there any difference in the number of attendees?
I did not cover that event. I read some press reports the next day, and it did, he had a solid crowd of like his, the MAGA world was out in force for him that night, it seemed. But again, that was just based on my reading of other press reports, not my own coverage.
So what are some of the things that you are concerned about when it comes to healthcare? What would you like to see the candidates talk more about?
I think that we are in the midst of, when you take a step back just from the presidential race to kind of what's been happening on Capitol Hill with the on again, off again threat of a government shutdown. We've bought a lot more time now into next year. But that does, I guess at some point, the candidate or our leaders will have to make some choices in terms of, you can't just use the discretionary budget to make social riders, to make rules for policies. And that's been one of the reasons why they fight. I think that, they spent some time talking about the fentanyl problem in our country. And again, I would say Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, everyone agrees, everyone on the stage was agreeing that this is a problem with border control, because through the border, especially the southern border, but through the borders, we're getting this deadly fentanyl that's killing Americans, the overdoses, and sometimes not even overdoses, accidental use.
Wow.
But the thing that Chris Christie and Nikki Haley said, they talked about that part of it, but they also talked more about the need to address demand, and that there was a need to start treating abuse and to start trying to help people so that by the time you, if you diminish the demand, you'll also get to the supply side of the problem.
I was surprised to see in your article that Christie actually referred to fentanyl or drug abuse as a health issue similar to cancer or any other type of disease. He actually called it a disease, which is, to me, thinking back, years ago, that seemed to not be part of the Republican jargon. They did not usually do that, but he actually stepped forward and actually said that.
Right. I thought that was a pretty important moment.
Wow. So do you think any of these candidates have a shot of closing that gap with the front runner Trump? And also, is Trump's, because of people have their doubts about exit polls and people have their doubts about what, polls really mean when it comes to Election Day, is Trump's lead really as solid as it appears to be? And does anybody have a shot of closing that gap?
Oh, man, I think that those are questions that would require a higher pay grade than mine to really answer. I think he has really solid support right now, but also that's a year away.
Right. Anything could happen.
And so we're going to go a long way between now and then. Lots could happen that could change the calculation, that could change voters' minds. So who knows? I think it could be a wild ride.
What did you learn most about writing the article?
Well, I guess I've been fascinated by the abortion, the abortion debate within that broader debate, and also how that reflects the Republican struggle with the abortion issue. The thing about the debate came the day after the election day was on Tuesday. The debate was on Wednesday, and the Republican, 15-week ban or an anti-abortion really suffered a lot of losses at the polls. I mean, really important. What the abortion rights advocates were saying was a really important ballot initiative passed in Ohio, and Ohio is a red state. In addition, in Virginia, where Governor Youngkin was campaigning really hard on that 15-week ban and hoping to reclaim, he's a Republican, he wanted to reclaim for his party both houses of the state legislature. And they, if my memory serves me, they had one of those. They ended up losing control of both.
Wow.
And then also in Kentucky, the Democrat, Governor Beshear, the incumbent, he came back again abortion was a big issue in that campaign. So Democrats seem to have more facility on that issue, and Republicans are really struggling to kind of find a way to thread the needle, to be against abortion, but yet not turn off their independent voters and to turn off the people that kind of believe that whole well, I don't approve of abortion or I don't support abortion, but I feel like there have to be some ways, there exceptions. We can't just pretend these problems don't exist.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a really interesting point.
And also
to watch for me. I
think on top to your point as well is that nobody in this country elected anybody in the Supreme Court, and they're the ones that made the decision. So it wasn't as if people voted on this topic, but yet the Republicans are pushing it as if it was something that the people voted for. So there may not be the public support that they think that they have on this, and it could be very divisive and actually a kind of a thorn in the heel of the Republican Party.
I mean, and that a lot of national polls show what you just stated, that the hard anti-abortion position does not have a lot of support. So, but again, it's a poll. So, I don't want to be some expert voice on all of this because I think that there's a lot of nuance. Mm-hmm. But right now it does seem that people across the board don't really seem to be embracing the hard line.
Was there any moderate voices that you heard on stage at all?
Well, I think that was what was very interesting about Nikki Haley seemed to be the one that was trying to be moderate, and I thought that was interesting. She made no bones about the fact that if she were president and a ban came across her desk, she would sign it. But at the same point, she was the one that was saying, practically speaking, Democrats control the Senate. We don't know that we can't pass any, she didn't say that, but the House is so divided. It's hard to pass anything there. The votes in Congress to pass a national ban do not exist. So she was being sort of this practical voice of saying, let's find areas where we can have consensus. Let's focus on access to contraceptives, on, finding ways to encourage quality adoption, things along those lines.
So do you think at this point we are beyond the challenges to the Affordable Care Act at this point in our political lives? So are they still trying to reform or change the Affordable Care Act? Because I heard there was some kind of talk about Medicare, and then of course on the Democratic side there's this talk about Medicare for all, which I don't know where that's at now.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting point. They did not touch on that at the debate at all. I would say this is at KFF Health News. This is something that we watch, and we've been following the ACA since its inception. And so I would encourage your listeners to check out KFF Health News because there are a lot of stories on that. I can say it seems like the days of repeal and replace are kind of over now. But that doesn't mean that there aren't efforts. I think that if, within Congress or there are lawmakers that would like to nip around the edges. And there are, instead of making some sweeping repeal kind of effort, there are things like short-term health plans or association health plans, which have always been favorites of the right. They would love to do things that advance those kinds of coverage approaches, which were never included and not approved of by the ACA.
And so in your mind, watching that debate, did anyone win the crowd?
That's hard for me to say because I wasn't in the room covering it, and so I think that there seemed to be different points when different candidates hit the right tone with the crowd. But the moderators were also really kind of holding things together pretty well, I thought.
Mm-hmm. So if at the end of the day, if Trump actually does walk away with the nomination, provided he doesn't end up in jail first or something like that along those lines. Are there things that you see in his position or his platform that would substantially change healthcare or change what we see as health services across the country?
I think that that is yet to be seen. Some of it would be within, the implementation of how he executed his efforts. I think maybe on Thursday or Friday, I read a news article about how the thinkers in the Trump world were plotting a way to put a national abortion ban in place without legislation. Like, I'm not quite sure how that would happen, how you could do that. But, he would, depending on what the makeup of the House and Senate is, he would still face those same kind of challenges of, if nothing can pass through Congress, then he can't do it unless he finds an end run on that particular issue. Now, I will say in his previous administration, he did advance some of the, like you asked about the ACA. The Trump administration did loosen some of the regulations that, blocked or I should say tamp down on short-term health plans and some of those other formulations. Now, the Biden administration rolled those back, so it's been kind of a dance. So you could expect, I think, some of those things maybe would be back in style again.
Mm-hmm. So on Biden's side, what is he doing to on the healthcare front? What are his goals with healthcare and the healthcare of American citizens?
Well, I would say again, I would encourage your listeners to check out KFF Health News because there's a lot there on that issue. One of the things that I've noticed right now with a number of our stories, because we are in the midst of open enrollment season for Medicare and also for the ACA. The Biden administration, for instance, has been sort of looking into some fairness issues, I guess is the correct term, having to do with the marketing of Medicare Advantage plans.
Okay.
Just to kind of, because anybody who watches television or, you hear the constant ads. So the Biden administration was making an effort to rein in some of those ads and ask for more accountability in terms of the services that beneficiaries would have access to, and then also to make sure that access continued after it wasn't just something that was talked about during open enrollment, that it continued to be talked about during the regular plan year. So I think they have been doing some things like that. The Biden administration has continued, I think, to work on, supporting the Affordable Care Act. They're in the midst of doing the Medicaid unwinding, which is, from the pandemic rules.
Mm-hmm. Has all that money been spent? What happened to all that? Because there was money left over from the pandemic that wasn't allocated or used. What happened to that money?
That is something I can't really speak to that. Okay. I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe there's an article on KFF Health News. Maybe
I'm sure there is.
We're out of time, so I appreciate your article, and I thought it was a very good read, and also gave me an insight as to the pulse of this country, as to what people are thinking, particularly on the conservative side of things. Love to have you back. Look forward to your next article, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, bye.
What a great show we had today with all 4 roundtables. Community outreach with LULAC, community roundtable with our partner National Nurses United. Wow. Fabulous as always with Stephanie Kalota of Veteran Legislative Voice Podcast, and she's AHG correspondent. Wonderful show. And with KFF Health News. Please check out their articles. And Miss Stephanie, I am going to predict in such a way that the independents and women will break together when it comes to abortion in 2024, because I feel like this personally right now. Ohio won because they understand when it's all said and done, a woman in the privacy of her own home, between she and her God, between she and her beliefs, should have the last say so what she does with her uterus and vagina. So guess what? I'm just going to say women and independents are going to break for abortion rights in 2024. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why Ohio voted like they did. And that's a deep red stake. Yeah, because, Sean, when it's all said and done, I should have the final say so. I understand how you may feel legislatively. I get that, Congress, Senate, but when it's all said and done, the bottom line stops with me, my body, my uterus, my vagina, my business. And that's where it is. So, anyway, Thanksgiving is coming up, and we are so grateful. We're so grateful, Sean, to the armed forces in particular right now, because they're serving. They're not going to be home with their family members. So how do we not especially say happy Thanksgiving to the armed forces and their family members and loved ones? Thank you so, so very much for what you guys do every day. I think as a civilian, I'm starting to be more appreciative than I was when we first started this show 7 years ago, because I'm looking at Israel, I'm looking at Gaza, and if Hamas, if Iran, if Russia, if North Korea thought they could get away and do us like that, they would do it, Sean. Don't you remember 9/11? Even the atheists was praying. That scared the hell out of everybody over here when the planes hit those two buildings.
Right, but one thing, but not to cut you off, but the thing that's really important, I think we have to do and think about as military members and people that have worn uniforms, have been in combat.
Yeah, we
have to have better relations with our countries around the world.
Absolutely.
You can have the strongest military in the world. Okay, Israel has the strongest military in the Middle East. Didn't stop Hamas from attacking them.
Right.
We had the strongest military in the world. Didn't stop 9/11 from happening.
Exactly.
It's about the relationships you have with the nations around the world, and also understanding who your friends are and who your enemies are, but making sure that you have a cognizant and really truly deeply understand how other nations interact with our nation.
Yeah. Yeah, but Sean, they respect us to the point they know they just can't come and do that freely, and they just can't do that.
But we're not dealing with nation states anymore. It's all about, these are mostly terrorist organizations.
Right.
They're cells. They're cartels. They don't care. They're not worried about war with their nation. They're not worried about boundaries and borders and stuff like that. They're more concerned about making points, and also
because they're extremists.
A lot of ideology.
Yeah, extremists. But if they thought they could really get away with it, I just feel personally like they would try more attempts to do so.
But we got to be careful about putting our soldiers out there overseas, just throwing our soldiers out in wars and having them come back without any results. We have to make sure that when we fight wars, we fight the right wars on the right terms and have an idea about what we're going to do once the war is over with.
Absolutely. So on behalf of Cliff Kelley, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, Sean Claiborne, the best digital director, producer, Ivan Ortega, Scouts Honor Production, our technical producer, thank God, is Titus. We love him to pieces forever and evermore. He's been with us for 7 years when we first started this show. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We won't be on the air next week because we need a break, and we're celebrating Thanksgiving with our family. So to all of you all, happy Thanksgiving!
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.